Search Talk Live with search engine optimization and marketing experts Robert O'Haver and Matt Weber. Powered by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Search Talk Live. I'm your host, Robert O'Haver, along with Matt Weber of Roar Internet Marketing. Matt, how's it going?
Doing fantastic, and happy to be back. Just got back in from Jacksonville.
Yeah.
Talked to a nice group of people on behalf of Google at a Google Get Your Business Online event, and had a good crowd there, chilly crowd. Spoke at a facility that didn't have any heat, and they weren't expecting Jacksonville's coldest day of the year.
Gosh, can you imagine? I mean, well, yeah, I guess you could. I can't imagine.
But it was nice people, and we had a good group there, and it was a great experience.
Very cool. Very cool. Those of you just tuning in for the first time, Search Talk Live is a digital marketing podcast. We talk about everything to do with digital marketing. It could be social media, content marketing, conversion optimization,
local search,
SEO, you name it. We cover it pretty much. We try to give everybody a little bit of something to take home and some actionable items that you can use to make you a better marketer.
Yeah, and last week's show on local search was chock full of you can go home and do this in the next hour and see a benefit type tips.
Yep. Pam, she did an awesome job. Today we're going to be talking and I'm going to warn you ahead of time, kind of a spoiler alert, but we're
going deep.
Yeah, we're going deep. It's going to be a little more technical than usual because we're going to be talking about schema and that type of stuff. So it's follow along, take notes, and then you can research it after the show or play it back later and listen to it and get if we say something technical and you don't understand it, you can look it up and you'll find it on Google.
And you can send in your question live.
Yes. You can go to, thank you for reminding me. You can go to Twitter and you can type in hashtag Search Talk Live and ask your questions, and we'll answer them live on the air, or our guest will, one of the two.
Yeah, and I want you to hang into the show too, because I think the benefit of today's show is we're always challenged with figuring out if our content is actually serving the purpose, right?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing that Google's looking for. Are we providing a beneficial service to the people who are searching for us? And there's some high-level ways to do that. But today we're going to talk about that at a much deeper level.
Yeah. So get your notepads or laptops ready because here we go. Our guest today works with kind of a small organization called Red Hat. No, I'm kidding. A very large organization called Red Hat. He is the manager of search and findability at Red Hat, and is JP Sherman. JP, how's it going, man?
It's going really well. Thanks so much for having me here.
Yeah, welcome to the show. Now, tell our listeners about yourself and a little bit about your background.
All right. So real quick, I accidentally fell into search technology when I was in the United States Army under the Psychological Operations Command. My commander knew that I was a nerd, and so he ordered me to figure out, literally, quote, Sherman, I need you to figure out search engines. That was in 1998.
Oh, okay.
And it just turned out to be one of those weird things where the combination of technology and semantics and words, I fell in love with it. After the Army, I went and studied evolutionary biology at UNC Chapel Hill, and then ended up working by accident at one of the largest agencies, SEO agencies, and just kind of continued that, the search path after that. And after doing a lot of in-house and a lot of agency work, I've settled down at Red Hat, where I really don't consider myself an SEO anymore, because I've really found my niche in Onsite Search and the bigger topic and conversation of findability.
So you've kind of evolved, huh?
Yeah, nice. Well done. Well done.
I got to say, you're the first person I've met that said, I got into search in the military.
Yeah.
Really?
And he did a lot of stumbling and falling into and by accident.
I really find that a lot of search people come in through very strange and oblique ways. And for me, it was the project that we were working on was humanitarian assistance with demining and malaria prevention. Wow. So in my expertise is in Southeast Asia, where malaria is endemic, and the Thai-Cambodian border is the second most landmined area in the world. Mm-hmm. So we would use search campaigns and search engines and work with host governments to develop content about these topics in the hopes that people in like Southeast Asian internet cafes would find this information and be able to act on it and either help themselves or help someone else.
Very cool. Wow.
Yeah.
That's an important thing, because I've seen like documentaries where there's mines still all over the place. You know, you walk out in the woods, you can blow an arm or a leg off just walking through the woods.
Yep.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back on topic. Sorry. So where do you want to start at? Now, on-site search is, and you could probably vouch for this, is probably one of the underappreciated things that really need to be looked at heavily. It can be keys for content. It could be a ton of things. But where would you like to start?
So I'll start with on-site search because that's really the kind of the pinnacle of what I'm trying to accomplish. Mm-hmm. And the idea about the really critical thing about on-site search is that these are people who are already think you have what they're looking for. They are already engaged. They have already, if you know anything about the sunk cost fallacy, like, well, I've spent this much time looking for something here, I might as well, see if I can find it. Mm-hmm. So there are very strong indicators. So a user searching on your site is a very strong indicator and predictor of conversion. And the problem is that less than 1/4 of companies actually dedicate any amount of time to on-site search optimization. Mm-hmm. They put all of their money into an effort into SEO and Google optimization, but when the user comes, let's say they come from Google, they hit your site, and then they search, and you don't have good results. I mean, if you think about it, they know that Google is less than a second away. So if you don't give them good results, they're back on Google.
Yeah.
And you already have a customer a person who's already fairly well primed to buy something or to take an action. So not optimizing your on-site search is just something that I hate to use the phrase leaving money on the table, but it is one of those. It's a thing that you can do to enhance almost everything that your business does.
Right.
Can you give us some examples of an insight that you can gain from looking at on-site search analytics versus looking at search query data?
Yes. So one of the examples that I like to use is in a previous job, we found that there was a customer behavior difference between locations. So for example, we found that people in Colorado, when they searched for bike tires, their intent was to find things, is more likely to find mountain bike tires. But when people in LA looked for bike tires, it was generally for road bike tires. So those are two very, very different things when you're a cyclist. So what we did was we created these geographical filters and identifiers so that when somebody in Colorado searched for bike tires, we would bias mountain bike tires in the results. Somebody from LA, we would bias road bike tires in the results. And almost immediately our conversions doubled.
Wow, that's a great example of putting in personalization to increase conversion.
Yeah. And because we were able to look at the exact same query, break it down by behavior, and then break down that by localization, that's the kind of information, that's the kind of thing that you can discover when you look at not just the words that are typed into the box, but the entire behavior from query to discovery to completion.
Yeah. And I see that too, that where sites do not put in a search. And I think they're really selling themselves short because that's extra data that they wouldn't normally have, Well,
it seems like people think that's something that e-commerce sites do.
Right.
But it's really a technique for all websites.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, if you only have 10 pages or so, I don't know, but
right.
If you're a fairly decent sized site, definitely.
JP, on mobile
Yes.
versus desktop, more of a need for on-site search on mobile than desktop, or do you see any difference in the user's tendency to use that technique depending on the platform?
That's a really fantastic question. Most of the data that I have is so at Red Hat we're in the software business, and the area of my expertise is really in kind of support search. People looking to either get information or to fix something or something like that. And so when we start segmenting into mobile, we found that our mobile traffic, not just our traffic, but the types of queries that we get from mobile are almost overwhelmingly support related. And so we did some research, and we found that when you're looking at an engineer who could be somewhere in the server stacks looking for a particular piece of information, that we find that on mobile we get a lot more long tail type keywords. However, on desktop, we get a lot of informational, such as how does X integrate with Y? How do I migrate from version 4 to version 6? So really kind of high intent, very, more complicated searches. But on the mobile side, we get very, very specific searches. The corollary on a more e-commerce side is that, one, when you're searching on mobile, you generally have a really good predictive text ability that's not always present in the desktop version. Excuse me. So you find that for mobile site searches, people try to express complex intents into shorter words. So it becomes very, very, so the behavior becomes very, very different. And I would argue that the mobile search is really where you need to focus, because if they're trying to express a fairly complex intent into a smaller space, that leaves a lot of room for ambiguity when it comes to how your search platform figures it out.
So does that make
if you can do well on mobile?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so if you do well on mobile search, you're probably doing a lot better on desktop search.
So are you saying, is it harder to interpret the searcher's intent because they're using such short phrases?
Yes.
Like that?
Yes. And on this side, we don't have a lot of data that says this is a voice search or somebody used kind of talk to text.
Sure.
Or if they punched it in themselves. So that's not the kind of data that I have access to, at least on our side.
So I'm sorry, I did it again. There's kind of delay, and I didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, and yeah, so there's a behavioral difference and there's a specificity difference on mobile that makes it fairly unique. The last part is on mobile search is that designing for mobile search can be very, very different than designing for desktop search. Things that work on desktop will not work on mobile. So that's part of the UX element.
Interesting. So I guess what I'm saying, in your case, when you're finding multiple queries of looking for the same thing, do you have your team go out and create content around that, or better optimization of pages referring to that that document they're looking for, or what? Yeah.
Short answer is yes, and that is a very, very good and very big question. So I'll start with the fact that on the content side, the search machine, it's going to do what the machine does. The trick is to measure the content consumption and conversion. So I talk about consumption and conversion as ways to quantify the value that the user perceives post-search. Conversion is fairly obvious, add to cart or purchase. Consumption can be a little more nebulous, as in time plus scroll. Like, did they spend 5 minutes on the site and scroll all the way down, or did they spend 2 seconds on the site and immediately bounce back to the search results? So we use that data to figure out, for this universe of keywords, was this piece of content relevant and useful for the user? And once you start looking at that kind of information, you can see that there are pieces of content that get hundreds of clicks, but nobody spends time there. Mm-hmm. And that sends a signal to your content department like, this is either ranking for the wrong keywords internally, or this page is so unwieldy or you can't understand it, mm-hmm. that nobody's actually interacting with that page. So you can actually build a kind of a monthly report of pages that don't react well and send them to the content team and say, these are pages that need to be looked at, reworked, better optimized. And essentially what you're doing is you are optimizing not just for on-site search, but you're also optimizing for Google. So you're doing two things. Mm-hmm. You're able to measure the content that doesn't work, and then optimizing it both for Google and on-site search. Plus, you get the addition of, being able to take some of the older content, refresh it. Freshness of content is very important for Google as well.
Okay, so your content's not hidden in a portal. It's actually indexable by Google.
Parts of our content is indexable by Google. Parts of it is not.
Okay.
So you've got to find balance here. You're looking at the data from the on-site search, and you're saying these pages are not converting well. They're not resonating. Maybe we're tracking the wrong audience. But at the same time, you're looking at them saying, hey, they rank really well. They're achieving their organic goals. How do you balance what those two conflicting objectives may be?
That's another really good question. So on the SEO side, Google does a very, very good job of understanding the intent. So when for example, Google understands that we sell software and understands words like download, migrate, upgrade, manage. So understands those conceptually. Mm. So Google does a much better job of ranking the right content in the right place for the users. On the on-site search side, though, the one thing that we do get from on-site search that we don't get from Google is really the universe of keywords that drive users to that particular content. And then we can measure what they do. So part of that balance is understanding that content doesn't live in a vacuum. Content lives contextually to a universe of keywords. So there may be 10 keywords for this one particular piece of content where it ranks really, really well. Mm-hmm. Of those 10 keywords, 7 of them convert really well. 3 of them do not convert at all. So why does this? So one of the things that you can control with on-site search is why does this content rank for these 3 keywords that don't convert? Mm-hmm. And part of the issue is that for a lot of on-site search engines, there are applications that look at clickstream data. So the more a user clicks on a particular result in on-site search, the more likely that is that they want that's a good result. But they generally don't take into effect any kind of conversion of consumption data. So you'll run into the problem of popular content is popular because it's popular.
Right.
And so that kind of creates this weird feedback loop. But so only if you look at the consumption and conversion data from that universe of keywords can you tell, for these 7 keywords, this piece of content is great. For these 3 keywords, it sucks. And then you can take a look at the content and see, oh, this is why this piece of content is being picked up for these keywords. And then you can change it. So on the Google side, because you don't get a lot of keyword data directly from, at least not like we used to. So you may, and because the level of measurement that I'm talking about is fairly granular, and Google doesn't really give a lot of granular information anymore. Mm-hmm. So you're going to learn a lot more from your on-site search than you are from Google.
Sure.
With Google, you're going to understand kind of the health of the site, the overall trends, the overall click-through rates, and the overall things that rank.
Some of it.
With the on-site search, some of it, yeah. On the on-site search, this is something that is completely in your control.
Gotcha.
So we're talking about text in your answer, and we focused on that as whether or not that's the key to the page converting or not converting. But what role do images and layout play, and how can we measure that?
So images as indexed content or images as a UI element?
As a UI element, because they're playing a role in that conversion too.
Yes. I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give is don't be Google. Just let Google be Google, you be you. Because when I look at things like automotive websites, their search results are very image heavy. When I look at products like Amazon, very image heavy. Their SERP design is actually is optimized to give you the most important information that a user can have to make that selection. And remember, when we're talking about clicks, you're looking at a user who generally has a dwell time, and dwell time is the time a user spends looking at the SERP. Mm-hmm. They usually have a dwell time of right around 9 to 10 seconds. 70% of that time is going to be spent on the top 4 results. The rest of the time is going to be spent on the bottom part. So on average, you have less than 1 second to convey a level of value to the user. And this is when kind of I get all evolutionary biology on you guys, super nerdy. But we evolved eyesight so that we can immediately identify food, threats, and things that we want very, very quickly. So when it comes to e-commerce and product search, using images as a part of your search results can be essentially a click magnet.
Yeah.
And the other part of the behavior side is that when you're in an active search mode, because there's passive search and there's active search. Once a user submits a query, they go into active search mode. And so they're actively at the processing acceptance and rejection criteria for every single result that they see. When I was looking for a new coffee maker, I was like, not this one, not this one, not this one. This is a maybe. And then my maybes turned into yeses. And those decisions were made in less than 10 seconds. So images in search can be incredibly powerful. They can be very helpful to the user as selection modifiers. But when it comes to more content-based information like knowledge bases, images may not be the best way to go. Right, for example, if I'm looking for a bike, I can visually separate the bike that I like. However, if I'm looking for best kids bike helmets, having that image of the content may not be terribly helpful because the image associated with that type of content may be larger, more emotional, and then shrunk down into a SERP snippet that may convey nothing to the user.
Let me ask you something off topic here a little bit. Mm-hmm. With the huge knowledge base, and you said a majority of your, or maybe I assumed a majority of your traffic is through mobile. Is Red Hat using AMP?
No. I do want to clarify that most of our traffic is not through mobile.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I think I was referring to the types of queries that we get through mobile.
Okay, I got you. Sorry.
But the majority of our traffic is desktop.
Linux.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's I don't know if there's a Linux phone yet, but AMP is I think AMP is really good if you are a publisher or if you publish information that is more timely than evergreen.
Gotcha.
So in our case, one of the things that I'm doing some research on is things like security vulnerabilities, like Heartbleed or Venom or Dirty Cow. So all of these were some fairly significant vulnerabilities in technology. And so what happened is that when those types of things happen, that is where AMP can be incredibly useful because Google sees it, it recognizes it, and it knows that it is relevant in a fairly short period of time. Whereas documents about how to migrate Red Hat Enterprise Linux 6 to Red Hat Enterprise Linux 7.
Right.
That's not super like AMP friendly.
And it's not heavy either because there's not a lot of images, right?
Right. It could be like 70 pages of straight up text and code.
Gotcha.
But so that's not something that I really feel would get too much benefit out of being amped.
Gotcha.
Your background in ontology is helping you analyze this data. Tell us what ontology is and how does it connect to SEO for you?
Okay. So ontology is a connection between things, such as my ontology is I am JP. I work at Red Hat. I live in Raleigh. I have children. I roast my own coffee. So these are topics and things that are about me, but they're not hierarchical. A taxonomy is hierarchical. So when I look at a hierarchical example would be something like content type, such as I have a product type, I have a product. Under this product, I have 6 different content types. Under these content types, I have these different functions. It's a parent-child relationship with a taxonomy. And with an ontology, they don't have to be related, but they definitely describe more, they give more contextual information about the topic. So when I talk about taxonomies and ontologies, I use that in context of developing schema. And so when I say schema, at its core, a schema is basically an organized set of rules that describe things. So if I'm trying to describe a product, my taxonomy describes the thing. So I talked about coffee makers earlier. A taxonomy of a coffee maker would be coffee maker, brand, type of coffee brewing, like espresso or drip, things like that. Electric, press, like these are all things that would go into our taxonomy.
Relationship, yeah.
Technically, no.
No.
But I don't want to be too nitpicky here, but
okay.
It's the ontology that describes the relationship. The taxonomy defines the thing. The ontology defines the relationships.
Gotcha.
So when you're looking at schema, you have both a taxonomic element and an ontological element. So you want to be able to define the things that you have. And the definition is built in these taxonomies. And while you may have 2 different products with 2 different texts, 2 different definitions with 2 different features, many different features, some of those features are going to overlap. It's going to have similar features from one product to another product.
Gotcha.
Like bicycles have 2 wheels. So when you're talking about bike wheels, that's where the relationships happen.
Okay. Of
common characteristics between products that are defined by the taxonomy.
Gotcha.
And I don't. It feels really weird.
Sorry, JP. Hold 1 second. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies. Check out robertpalmercompanies.com for more information.
Find the true value of your home when you log on. Homevalue.com.
Get your questions in on Twitter. Type hashtag Search Talk Live and your question. Now back to the show.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
No worries. So when I come back to the construction of a schema, such as a schema.org for search, excuse me, the ability to, the idea is that the schema provides contextual information for search engines to greater understand things. And if a search engine knows that, for example, if you are looking for, I'll just use bikes again as an example because it's something that I know about. if you're looking for bike seats, you have in your taxonomy definition that this product is a bike seat. And then there are racing bike seats, and then that cuts it down. So the taxonomy is able to filter down what the user is looking for, and then kind of create these little groups. So the benefit of structured markup, as in schema.org, is that you start creating these definitions of what this page is about, and then because you have the markup, you have the structured markup. Similar things in the structured markup create this horizontal relationship between the products. So Google understands that this is what this thing is. You have many things like this thing, and they all have these common relationships horizontally defined in the schema. And that's one of the biggest reasons why schema is such a big deal.
Yeah. Are you limited though to what you can do, or versus what you think you'd like to do? I mean, as far as, there's different types and all that stuff for schema. So it's like, are you limited,
or how far do you go?
Yeah, exactly.
I generally take the approach of get something out there first, and then improve upon it.
Okay.
So the schemas that I built are built around products and content types. So Google knows that this product has a definition that has a schema. This content type also has a schema. It says this is documentation about this particular product. And what I do is I match the content type taxonomy and then the product taxonomy. I mash them together, and that creates a unique schema code.
Let's see if we can elevate this for our favorite group on Search Talk Live, plumbers. So
okay.
let's take a person listening to the show, and they're running a website for a local plumber, and he has a variety of services. What is he going to think about when it comes to schema, and what are his first steps, or her?
Honestly, I would say that my advice to a plumber would be local schema, because that is the critical contextual element that a user really focuses on.
Sure.
The second thing would be adding schema for reviews and stars, adding schema for phone numbers, adding schema for times that they're open or times that they're available to be called.
And what do you mean by schema local?
So schema local. So if you go to schema.org, that is a reference site that has essentially schema templates for different things. So there are video schemas, there are technical article schemas, there are location schemas, there are average customer review schemas. And so each of these elements directly relate to a particular aspect of the information of the information.
So the person listening to the show is saying, "Hey, JP, that sounds awesome, but I've already listed my hours on my website. Why do I need to schema it?"
It makes things clearer to search engines. It also creates a very, and this is when I have to go a little technical, but it creates a hook that you can actually connect onto. So let me back up real quick. So using schema is a way to give search engines a signal of importance and relevance. If you have a plumbing site with schema, it is more likely that Google is going to show that information directly in the search results.
And there could be cards and all kinds of stuff,
Cards, knowledge graphs, all of those things. And if you have a site that does not have schema, you are essentially making Google work a little bit harder. There is more room for error, And if Google doesn't understand it, it's not going to display it.
Yeah,
So
let me ask you a couple of questions. I have a listener asking a question here, and they want to know: do they mark up their addresses and stuff on every page, or is it just the contact page, or how is that supposed to be done?
Just the contact page.
Yes. And I see this mistake a lot, not only with that, but with reviews, just improper markup. And I actually got, and I'm admitting this, I can't believe it, but yeah, I made a mistake.
You're off the show.
I did a markup, and Google actually said, "Hey, if you don't change this, we're going to give you a penalty."
Really?
Yeah. I had like a month to do it. So I was like, that's odd. Usually they just say,
you're out.
yeah.
And
Right.
you got that notification in Search Console?
Yeah.
And what was the error in the markup?
It was hreflang.
Okay.
It wasn't pointing correctly. But it was, I've never seen that before. Usually it's like, okay, we're going to penalize you until you take it off.
Right.
Maybe it's
right.
just because it's me. No, I'm kidding.
Right, you've got some thought. You do know people in high places. I know that.
Joking. No
So,
preferential.
JP, just getting back for our friend who runs the plumbing website, he's now on a path to go to schema.org. He can see the different schema meta tags that are available. And your advice is, number one, attack all the ones for the local level, because that's where plumbers compete. They compete in geo-specific searches on that.
Right.
He says, I got it. I understand what it. Now, what's the next thing that he can do with schema once he's got local down?
So I think one of the, I'm at this point, I'm looking at a fairly small to medium sized business,
Yep.
probably running off of a templated either WordPress or maybe Drupal content, or fairly common content management system.
Yes.
Most of these content management systems have plugins that you can custom create your own schema per page. So implementation shouldn't be too hard. Read the documentation. But when we're talking about enterprise level sites, that's when it gets really weird and really fun. But for that person with a small to medium sized business, just really, really focus on what would be useful for the customer, such as locality, contact information, things like that.
Yeah.
The next thing that I would look at schema is, we've already talked about like customer reviews. Schema those. It's fairly universal that it is much more likely for a person to click on a 4-star reviewed local listing than a 3-star local listing, or at least that's going to be the first one that they consider.
Mm-hmm.
So schemaing reviews. The other thing that they can really kind of schema is if they run a blog or product pages or services, because services are. And here's the thing about schema.org, is that it's a project where there are hundreds and hundreds of contributors. So people come in and say, I think that political parties can have their own schema, or they need dentists have their unique schema. So there's a lot of collaboration, and there's a regular effort of people who contribute to schema.org to expand the number of schema templates that they have. So then there might be at this point like a plumbing schema. It's more likely kind of a local business schema, but that's when you're looking at a very local business, small to medium size, using a fairly common content management system. Mm-hmm. Just really focus on the things that influence a buyer's decision.
Sure.
Anything else, and this is something that I've seen on more than one case, it's not the presence of schema that's going to help you rank better. The presence of schema is going to allow search engines to give the user more information that they can make a decision on that you can control.
Right. And in my eyes, the way it works is when you mark it up with schema, you're going to get a much better snippet in search in some cases, not all cases, but
right.
Which implies people to click and more clicks to the site, which in turn brings up your ranks because you're getting more clicks to that page.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
So definitely worth it for the average local small to medium-sized business to embrace schema, particularly at the local level as a starting first step.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I guess what I'm saying is that it's not a direct causation of ranking, but indirectly, yes.
Yeah.
It can.
Yes.
Right. Which I think is the problem with a lot of the things we talk about on the show is people develop an expectation that,
Right.
if I put a quarter in, I'm going to get 50 cents out. And sometimes with SEO and particularly techniques like schema, it's not a direct linear mathematical correlation between what you put in and what you get out, but it holistically contributes to other efforts that you're doing for your SEO, which then gives you the ROI that you're looking for.
So, JP, I've got an idea for a new title for you. They should call you the Ontologist.
Oh, dude, that would be so cool.
Because then, people are like, "Oh, you're a doctor?"
Yeah.
Doctor of Search? No.
Yeah, I think my GP referred me to an ontologist. Yeah.
That's awesome.
I've got a little pain in my content. Could you look at it?
Or the alternate to that would be the taxonomist, in which people think that I stuff raccoons all day. So,
Oh, God.
Let's go back to taxonomy for just a minute, because people want to understand how the structure of their website affects the meaning that Google derives from the pages. Can you go into that for just a minute? How does the placement of a page within a given directory help Google understand the meaning of the page?
that's a really cool question. And so I kind of use the example of Batman as a description to answer your question. So if you look at Batman as an entity, which means an entity basically means that it is a recognized thing that has attributes. So when you start looking at Batman, he has context. Batman has locations, the Batcave, Gotham City, Arkham Asylum. He also has enemies, the Joker. He has friends, Catwoman, who also overlaps into the enemy category, as well as like Superman, sometimes friends, sometimes enemy. And so as this entity relationship builds, and Google understands that when you talk about Batman, you also have a much larger universal context of the place in which Batman exists.
Right.
So when it comes to ranking, a site about Batman that has no information on the Joker is going to be at a disadvantage to a site that has information on the enemies, the friends, the locations, the vehicles, the things on his belt.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the depth of content. It's not just about having more content. It's about having a contextual realization that a particular entity lives in a context that has attributes that extend beyond themselves.
Correct. Well said. I mean, in the instance of the plumber.
I was going to say, let's translate this to another superhero,
right.
The plumber.
The plumber.
No.
No, dude, plumbers are superheroes.
They are. But
they are.
in that relationship, you're talking broken pipes,
Water heaters.
water. Exactly.
So the more, so if I'm listening to the show and I'm going, okay, I'm a plumber.
Mm-hmm.
I initially was going to have my website just be about what I do as a plumber.
Right.
But now as a result of listening to the show, I get it. I'm going to add content about water heaters.
Right.
And I'm going to add content about broken faucets. And I'm going to add content about broken toilets.
You got it.
Now, JP, how do I organize that content as a superhero plumber?
Okay, that's a really good question. I think that the plumber needs to understand the intent of the user, such as to learn more, to self-solve, or to immediately fix something. So we're getting into winter, or we're already into winter. As a plumber, I would start developing or promoting content that is about things that you can do to weatherproof your house from the cold, such as if you know that it's going to be freezing, if you turn the faucet on, your pipes aren't going to freeze.
Mm-hmm.
Or if your hot water heater goes out in the winter, here are 3 things that you can check to make sure that you need a plumber. or if your bathroom is, if things aren't flushing, then here are 3 ways to check to make sure that this is a plumbing issue and not a user issue. So then you start taking this content contextually by season. So you have your spring content, you have your summer content, and then you have your fall and winter content. Under these seasonalities, you have things like troubleshooting, you have
Preventive.
emergencies,
Yeah.
and then you have like, I love the troubleshooting idea. I think this gives users a way to kind of gently lead them into a call by saying, you may not need an expert because you might be able to do this, but in case you need an expert, here's how you know.
So then are you suggesting that he has superheroplumbing.com//plumbing challenges /fall /article 1, article 2, article 3, article 4?
Something like that. It doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah.
But if you have a good structured markup, you can actually structure your markup so that it's like, this is seasonal content.
Mm-hmm.
This is about water heaters, about toilets, about underground pipes.
So it could all be under plumbing challenges. It
Right.
doesn't need to be substructured, because back in the day, I think people did overkill on taxonomy. You know, they would have done Acme Super plumbinghero.com /water heater /water heater leaks /water heater replacement /water heater repair
/Orlando.
Right.
right
Right. No, yeah, and you're absolutely right. You don't. So if you no longer have to that's not going to hurt you. But you no longer have to have that deep of a directory structure. A lot of that information can be done through a lot of the information that Google used to take from URL structure can be given through structured markup.
Yeah.
Which is great because it saves users clicks. It makes it easier for the user, but yet you also get the benefit of allowing the search engine to organize the content.
Right. And I think that the primary benefit is that if the search engine looks at that structured markup and says, this is really interesting or important, they add search result features or elements that can assist the user immediately from the SERP to either call or better understand what they're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, Google's not stupid. So, like, doing things like that doesn't look natural. I mean, like, they're going that deep with your, just so you can throw all your keywords in there. It just doesn't, you don't have to do that anymore.
Yeah.
JP, what information can we get from combining the data in Search Console with Google Analytics that you can't get if you look at them both separately?
So this is, I think this is, that's a really interesting question. I think I generally use Search Console or Google Search Console to look at errors and the general health of my site. I really haven't been I haven't really been able to get really good actionable intelligence from Search Console itself. And because I focus primarily on on-site search, I look at what are the things that people are searching for. Let's go to the plumber again. Like if somebody is, like if the plumber notices that there's somebody out of the 500 visits a day, 200 people are looking for toilet repair. Like, you know that I'm going to be putting that links to toilet repair on my homepage, and I'm going to be actually probably spending a little bit of money on paid search.
Yeah.
So those are actionable things that you can do with on-site search information. The other thing that you can do with on-site search data is looking at the response from users to the queries. So if you find out that the same queries of people are looking for toilet repair, however, you get 0 leads that include search in the pathway, look at what's ranking and figure out and maybe add some. And here's this kind of a non sequitur, but on-site search engines love keyword metadata. Google, Bing, not so much. I've heard some people say that some SEOs tell their clients do not use keyword metadata, mainly because one, Google doesn't really care about it, and two, competitors can come in and kind of scrape your metadata. But if you take on-site search seriously, you want to add some of the keyword metadata because that is the fastest way to influence, generally the fastest way to influence ranking when it comes to on-site search. And it's also a way that you don't have to machine a solution with development by boosting, deboosting, things like that. The other aspect to on-site search is what's called a key match or a boosted result. Mm-hmm. So if I know that toilet repair is the number one thing searched on my site, I'm going to have the best toilet repair, best converting toilet repair article, lead gen, something, boosted, key matched, and it shows up at the very, very top. Most of the time, it looks like you want it to look a little bit different than the natural results, such as this is a recommended result or something like that. But every time somebody looks for that particular keyword, that comes up every single time. So you have a very high level of control over, if you know something converts and you know something converts well, you can control that.
Yeah,
so I think
if it's Google or Bing and they're not using meta keyword tags, I'm not going to waste my time with that. In your case, you probably would because it's a whole different ball of wax. But
right. Ooh, you got a question on Twitter.
Yep, just came across.
Nice.
All right. Do you see a benefit to having any on-site search components to a non-e-commerce local service business site?
Honestly, I would say it depends upon the level of traffic.
Yeah.
There are free search applications that can be run through most modern content management systems. There are plugins. I don't have a list in front of me of the names of them right now, but you can add a search feature to a smaller local business site.
It's also important to add one that has some kind of analytical tracking too.
Yes.
Yes. Because that's the whole purpose of it, is to grabbing that data.
Right. Because obviously you kind of run into the conundrum of people aren't searching because there's no search. So you don't know what the demand for search is.
Right.
And small extra step, make sure you turn that on in your Google Analytics.
Yes. Yeah. And the first thing I would do is I would make the search box from a UI perspective very, very noticeable. Mm-hmm. I would have some sort of text in the search box, such as search, look for information. Let's take that plumber. If I know that the number one keyword that people are looking for is for toilet repair, I'd say search for things like toilet repair, water heater repair. So give them a really easy way to interact with that particular search function, and then measure it. But I would say it would be, in general, it would be useful, but I wouldn't say that it's essential. That it's essential.
Right. It's almost like, especially if you're an e-commerce site, those are huge.
Absolutely.
Gotta have it.
I mean,
absolutely.
If someone lands on a page that's not the right product, I wish there was some way of just saying, "Hey, use the search bar," just point them to the right direction.
Right.
Because then you can really hone in on products.
Right. The other aspect to actually having a search box is search is becoming more and more prevalent as a way of navigating through the site. So I do see things like contact or about or so some non-content type search where they're looking to find, like, I've used on-site search to look for the company's Twitter so that I can mention them. And 9 times out of 10, I fail to do that. They just don't have that kind of information. Mm-hmm. So if you look at, for a smaller business, for a smaller site, especially local, I would have I would definitely have a search feature, but I would also make sure to include content that is contact, like, how do I contact you, or what is your Twitter?
Mm-hmm.
So that might be the secondary benefit of having search for a smaller, more local focus.
All right.
Good stuff. I think it is time.
Yes, it is.
Or leave it or believe it, or as I should call it, believe it or leave it. Believe it or leave it. And JP, we're going to give you 3 pieces of information we found from the internet, so you know it's indisputable. And we're going to ask you to tell our audience whether they should believe it or whether they should leave it. Are you ready?
Ready.
All right. Number 1, building content such as landing pages or microsites for voice search purposes will be a best practice for SEO in 2018.
That sounds like a trick question.
Yeah, it does. So I'll tell you my process. I lean towards leave it.
Okay.
And the reason why is that I think that that type of user intent is I'm skeptical as to like how often that would play itself out in some sort of digital system scenario.
Yeah. So there needs to be, that brings up a good point. There needs to be schema for audio files. I know there is for video, but like this podcast, for example.
Right.
There should be markup for that.
Yeah.
And maybe there is. Is there, JP?
I am checking right now.
All right, while you're doing that, since we're getting to the end of the show, we better go to number 2.
All right, number 2. In 2018, most mobile experiences will be designed around the swipe as an action rather than a click.
I would buy that. I think I believe that. As more people are using mobile, as mobile becomes as mobile is one of the primary ways people interact with content and the internet and e-commerce, I think that the swipe event is going to outpace the click event.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read an article, by the way, that this was based on that. It's actually going to change our vocabulary.
Really?
Yeah, that we'll start saying, hey, did that user click on that? We'll start saying, did that user swipe that?
Nice.
Wow.
It'll become that prevalent.
So he picked that up from a dating app, which is...
Yeah. Well, right. App is a large determinant of UX trends, right? All right, number 3. Little out of left field for you, but let's go for it. Number 3, Google Analytics benchmarking data will expand to include a segment on mobile.
That sounds. I think I'd believe that. Mm-hmm. I think that goes very well in their strategy with their desire to dominate with Android. Mm-hmm. So I think that it would definitely. I think I believe that. That makes sense to me.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you, JP.
Yes.
Last part of the show, our Search Talk Live tattoo. Now, going over everything we've talked about during the show, what would be your tattooable most succinct, as Matt says?
Okay. All right. So the most succinct advice that I would say would be to truly understand findability. Mm-hmm. You need to understand things in context in line with the way a user would look for it. Semantics. I cannot overstress the value of UI UX. I think that semantics and UI UX are really going to be the future of search.
I agree. Absolutely.
I think that might be a thigh tattoo on that one.
I have never been accused of being brief. I apologize.
Well, JP, I want to thank you for being on the show. That is JP Sherman, the ontologist.
It's a new CBS show.
Yeah, if they want to reach you on Twitter, how can they reach you?
I'm easy to remember, at JP Sherman.
That's pretty easy. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been an honor. It's been great. It was really great meeting you at PubCon, and Jesse was kind enough to introduce me to you. That was awesome.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, JP. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
All right.
Search Talk Live is sponsored by the Robert Palmer family of companies.
Find the true value of your home when you log on. Homevalue.com.
If you have questions for Search Talk Live, or you're interested in being a guest or a sponsor of the show, email Robert at searchtalklive.com. That's searchtalklive.com.